session 9, administration with SSH and SCP, secure shell and secure copy. As you have done, as you noticed, we are on part 2 of RHCSA training on CentOS 8 or RHEL 8. So far we have done these 3 sessions. Virtualization with KVM done, configuring virtual networking done, automated installation option done, and this is session 9, administration with SSH and SCP. After that we have some command line tools. Agenda of the session is introduction to SSH, configure an SSH client, command line access, more SSH command line tools, and graphical secure shell access. Introduction to SSH. Red Hat Enterprise Linux install secure shell package by default, always installed. Although firewall are enabled by default, but standard RHEL 8 firewall leaves TCP port number 22 on which SSH connect open for SSH access. Related configuration files are stored into etc SSH directory, and the secure shell daemon, that is SSHD, is secure because it encrypts the messages. Users who are listening on network can't read the data sent between SSH client and the server, and that's important on a public network such as internet. RHEL 8 or CentOS 8 incorporate SSH version 2, which supports multiple key exchange methods. As a client means you want to connect to SSH server, a remote SSH server. As a client, whether you are allowed to connect or not, whether you want to open connections or not as a client, these configuration details are stored into etc SSH config, SSH_config file. Individual users can have custom SSH client configuration file in their .ssh config file. For directives that are included by default, 4 directives are included. First is the host, to which host you will be allowed to connect as a client. Host star means you can connect to all systems. This is followed by a directive that supports authentication using generic security server application programming interface, that is GSS API for client server authentication, and this support provides support for Kerberos authentication as well. GSS API authentication value is yes. The next directive supports remote access to GUI applications. X11 is the legacy reference to X Windows system. Remember, it's X window, not X Windows. Windows is Microsoft product. Windows system is Linux, used on Linux. And the line is forward X11 trusted yes. And then we have some environment variables. Send environment variable language will be the language. Alright, these are environment variables, and this set the stage for command line access to remote systems. To access a remote system, you need to the username and password of that remote system. By default, direct SSH base access to the root account is enabled. For example, the following command open the shell using that account on the noted server1 system, ssh root at server1.example.com. Let's look at this and let's try understand this file in real. What does exactly is there? What are the contents of this file, ssh_config file, and how to connect to the remote system. I have both the systems, server1 and tester1, ready, up and running. So this is my tester1 and server1. You can see from tester1, let's first verify what we have in etc ssh_config, and this is the directive which I was explaining. These are the comments. Let me suppress the comment and let me show you the files, the important lines without comment. For that I can simply use grep -o, the line beginning with not hash. I'm reading as I'm writing, followed by any character, any number of characters, and the file etc ssh underscore config. What am I missing? Grep hyphen. Let me see. Yes, I'm fine. But, oh, they are actually all the lines are commented. So you can open these lines. By default, you notice that all the lines are commented. So let's open and uncomment the line. So the command was okay, syntax was okay. Only thing is that by default this line is not line right now. This is commented by default. Then forward X11 no, password authentication, GSS API authentication. Let's enable this also. And let's enable yes. Similarly, forward X11. So we are uncommented the lines. These are the good default settings. Temporarily, I might have disabled them, but I'm just showing you how to enable them. And by default, you could see that there was only one line. So I have just enabled the default directives, and now I'm ready to connect. These are the 4 directives. We don't require anything else. Now let's connect to the remote server, which is server 1. SSH username at hostname example.com, and it is connecting. It is asking me, the message is authenticity of this system cannot be established, but the key fingerprint is this. Are you sure you want to connect? So when you connect for the first time, you get this message. So you have to type yes, and then you are connected, and you are working on the server 1. So that's how you can connect. And this is working without any password because I might have transferred the keys, private public key pair. So let me see the private public key and remove that .ssh folder, and then I will try again. rm-rf.ssh. I removed that, and I do the same thing here also. rm-rf.ssh. I connect, exit from here, rm-rf.ssh, and now I try the same command. SSH root at server1.example.com. Authenticity, again same question because I removed that. I'll show you what it's stored in .ssh by default. Right now there is no .ssh directory on root server. What will happen after you start connection? You will see that. And now when you connect for the first time, it asks you the password. Why it was not asking the password, I will give you the region also, and what happens when you do that. By default, on the client, there is a directory created with the name .ssh. Okay. On the server, right now I'm working on the server, but let me exit from here and show you the directory. cd.ssh, and you see the known host file, which is created when you connect for the first time. If you see the content of this known host, you will see the known host file created, and you see the server 1.example.com, the IP address and the key of that server. Now on the server side, if you see ls-al.ssh folder does not exist on the system right now. So when you create, there is another way that is called key-based authentication that we will do later on. But yes, if you have GUI enabled, you can use -x, and then you will be able to run the command to monitor that system. So I'm not going to in the GUI part. We have just tried connecting to the system. Let's continue. So you have seen how to connect to the remote system using SSH, root at server1.example.com. If you get an error such as name or service not known when you attempt to access remote host via SSH, that will indicate that system cannot resolve the host name to the IP address. In that case, log on to the server1.example.com via SSH, use its IP address. In my case, I use server1.example.com. How that was happening? Because there is a file under /etc/hosts, and I have added the IP address and the host name of both my servers in that file, and that is called local resolver. I configured local resolver, and due to that local resolver configuration, I was able to access the machine using the host name. The following command works in the same way. If you are specify the username, you can use -l also. -l username, that is login, -l username or the login name server1.example.com, meaning the same. Without the username, .ssh command assume that you are logging in remotely as the username on the local system. Interesting point. If I don't specify username, this is optional. If I simply say SSH server1.example.com, that would mean I'm trying to log in on the remote machine as the current user on this machine. Which means if I'm logged in as Oracle user or Sangwan user on my local machine, and I use the same command to connect to my remote machine as user Sangwan, that would mean that I'm trying to connect to the remote machine as Sangwan user only. For example, if you were to run the command ssh server1.example.com from user Sangwan account, the SSH command assumes that you are trying to log into the remote server, that is server1.example.com system as user Sangwan. The first time the command is run between the systems, it presents something similar to this kind of message, the authenticity message, which I showed you. This was the kind of message you got. You have to type the answer yes, and then it will ask you the password. You supply the password and you get the prompt, and you are working on the machine. Once connected via SSH, you can do anything on that remote system that's supported by your user privileges on that machine. For example, you can even shut down the machine gracefully with the power of command. You can do anything, means everything. After executing the command, you will typically have a couple of seconds to exit out of the remote system with exit command. There's some interesting command line tools. If you prefer to access the remote system like FTP like client, then SFTP command works for you. Let's take a look and let's get some files and send some files on the remote version using SFTP. I'm working on tester1, and let me see a file here. I have file initial setup. Let me create a file with Anaconda. Let me change it, Anaconda, with the name sangwan.cfg, just to give it a different name, because there is the same file on the server one also, so you can see that. All right, so I just want to keep it different. So, and there's a file mysql.sh, and here I have sangwan.cfg. Now SFTP, let's send some files and some documents from this. Do we have something else also here? ls downloads, nothing. Anyway, but yes, still we can try with at least one script. First thing is we'll try to connect from here. SFTP server1 .example.com. It asks you the password, and now you are connected. Now to get the machine from that location, you can type get mysql.sh, and the script is available now. If you use ls, you will see the machine on the local system. This will show the directory of files on the remote system. Similarly, if you want to put the file Sangwan, which is there on this system, on the current system, to remote system, so you use put sangwan.cfg So that will send the file. Now this file is available here. So you can see sangwan.cfg file. Similarly, if you want to get multiple files, you can use -r. So get -r, and let me copy these files to download files just to show you that. Okay, copy MySQL to downloads, and similarly let me copy Sangwan also to downloads, and let me make the name change or cp-r downloads and make test out of it. So ls-l, you can see the test directory is created, and the files in the test directory are these two files. So I want to get the entire directory, so I can use test slash. So this will get the entire directory along with the files. So this is how you can work with SFTP. And now you see mysql.sh file is here, sangwan.cfg file is transferred to the remote system. Test directory, where you have all the files in the test directory, are available here. So this is how you can copy files from a remote system to local system using SFTP command. Although -l switch does not have the same meaning of .ssh command, it still can be used to log in to the account of any user with using SFTP command. Whereas a regular FTP communication proceeds in clear text communication, with SFTP, the tool which I demonstrated, commands can be used to transfer file in encrypted format, so your communication is safe. Alternatively, if you just want to transfer files over an encrypted connection, the SCP command can help you. To transmit a file, let's say sample.sh, to one of our systems, we can use the command similar to the following, like scp file name and the remote username at remote machine name, followed by the directory where you want to copy. Let's see this scp also. Now back to that. So let me remove this directory, rm-rf test, and I'm also removing this MySQL from here, because I want to put the file, I want to copy the file on this remote directory MySQL. So I'm removing mysql.sh, yes, rm-rf sangwan, and I've transferred. Now I'm clear. Now I want to copy the file mysql.sh. So scp secure copy. Where to copy? What username? Root at server1.example.com :root, the directory where you want to copy. Of course, I missed the file name, so it's not a big deal. I can type it again. So copy scp mysql.sh remote system name : directory name, and it will copy the file to the remote system in root directory. Now the file is available here. So that's how you can use SCP. Unless key-based authentication has been configured, the command prompt for the password for the user Sangwan or user root on the system server 1. Once the password is confirmed, the SCP command will transfer the file to the in encrypted format to the noted directory, which is :home sangwan rhcsa. In my case, it was /root in the demonstration on the remote system named server 1. Graphical interface. The SSH command can be used to forward the output of a GUI application over a network. For that you use -x. Once you use -x and connect to the remote machine server1.example.com, then you can run the GUI based command. As strange as it sounds, it works if the local system run as an X server while you call remote GUI client applications from the remote systems. That is very interesting to observe. By default, both the SSH server and the client configuration files are set up to support X11 communication over the network. All you need to do is connect to the remote system with -x switch or -y to use trusted X11 forwarding, which bypass some security extension controls. For example, you could use the command sequence shown in the previous figure, on the slide in the previous figure, to monitor the remote system. Alright, That's all for this session. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.